Hello everyone, wishing you all good health and peace in life. Today, we arrive at a turning point in Dee's journey, one he has waited for with a quiet, patient heart. Dee was delighted to receive news from his ex-wife. The divorce will be finalized soon. For him, it feels like the first crack of light after years of shadow. But in the stillness that follows, a question lingers: will Huyen and little Maya's lives truly change when this chapter finally closes? Will freedom bring the peace they've dreamed of? Or will new challenges rise from the path ahead? As the winds shift and the horizon opens, the answers wait just beyond the next step of their journey. The morning sun had just risen over the wet countryside, casting a golden glow on the puddles left behind by days of heavy rain. Dee stood in his small garden, mud clinging to his boots, hands firm around the shovel as he prepared to rebuild the fallen fence posts. Each strike of the spade into the damp earth felt lighter than usual, for today he carried news that had been a weight off his heart. His ex-wife had agreed to finalize the divorce. Inside the house, Huyen swept the floor while keeping an eye on Maya, who sat on a low wooden stool humming to herself. When Dee stepped in, his face brighter than she had seen in weeks, she immediately sensed something had changed. "It's almost over," Dee said, his voice steady but filled with relief. "She's agreed. Soon, I'll be free." For a moment, Huyen stood still, the broom pausing midair. She had imagined this day countless times, yet now that it was so close, her heart carried both hope and worry. The thought of no longer being just a guest in Dee's house, of truly building a home together, brought warmth to her chest. But the shadow of uncertainty lingered. Would life really change for her and Maya? Or would new struggles simply take the place of the old ones? That afternoon, after leaving Maya with her great-grandmother, Huyen and Dee walked side by side to the market, their baskets filled with freshly harvested longans. The sun was harsh, and sweat glistened on their foreheads, but each step felt like progress towards freedom, towards a life they could truly call their own. As they sold their fruit and counted the modest earnings, Huyen thought of the small piece of land they dreamed of buying. It wouldn't be much, but it would be theirs. No legal ties to anyone else, no fear of being told to leave. Just a simple home where laughter could echo without restraint, where Maya could grow up safe and loved. Dee, watching her from across the stall, silently promised himself that when the divorce papers were signed, he would waste no time. He would work harder than ever, build their home with his own hands, and make sure that Huyen and Maya never again had to live with uncertainty. The road ahead would still be difficult, but for the first time in a long while, both of them could see it clearly, and it led to a place they had only dreamed of until now. The day the divorce papers arrived, the air in the small countryside home felt different, lighter, as if the walls themselves had been holding their breath. Dee held the envelope in his hands for a long moment before opening it. The paper inside was simple, but to him, it felt like the key to a locked door he had been pushing against for years. "It's done," he said quietly, almost as if speaking too loudly might make it disappear. His eyes searched for Huyen's, and when she looked back, he saw a glimmer of relief mixed with cautious hope. They sat together at the wooden table, Maya playing nearby with scraps of cloth she was pretending were dolls. Dee reached across the table, taking Huyen's hand. "No more ties to the past," he said. "From today on, it's just us." Huyen smiled, though her fingers tightened around his. She had learned not to trust change too easily. Life had a way of testing people, even in their happiest moments. But as she looked at Dee's face, lined with exhaustion yet softened by peace, she knew this was real. That evening, they walked through the village to look at a small piece of land for sale. It was nothing grand, just a patch of earth by the edge of a rice field, with a few wildflowers growing among the weeds. But Huyen saw more than land. She saw the walls they would build, the garden they would tend, and Maya running barefoot under the sun. "We can make this ours," Dee said, his voice steady with determination. "I'll work every day, and little by little, we'll build a home here." The wind carried the scent of wet earth as the sun dipped below the horizon. They stood side by side in silence, not needing to speak. The past was behind them now, and though the future was still uncertain, they were no longer walking toward it alone. Huyen thought of all the storms they had weathered, literal and otherwise, and felt something inside her shift. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that peace might not just be a dream. The morning they began working on the new land, the sky was clear and blue, as if blessing their first day. Dew clung to the grass, and the soft crunch of their footsteps broke the stillness. Dee carried a worn shovel over his shoulder, while Huyen balanced a basket filled with seeds, small tools, and a flask of water. Maya skipped ahead, her laughter ringing through the quiet air. She stopped to pick wildflowers along the path, holding them up proudly as if presenting treasures. "These will look pretty by our new house," she said, and Huyen's heart warmed. When they reached the land, Dee drove the shovel deep into the soil, testing its firmness. "It's good earth," he said. "Once we clear it, we can start planting." Huyen knelt beside a patch of weeds, pulling them up one by one, her hands quickly becoming stained with dirt. The scent of fresh earth filled her senses, and for the first time, she imagined what it would be like to call this place home. The hours passed slowly but peacefully. They worked side by side, Dee digging furrows, Huyen smoothing the soil, and Maya helping in her own small way, carrying pebbles away in her tiny hands. Every so often, Dee would pause to wipe the sweat from his brow, smiling as he looked at them. This was hard work, but it was theirs. By midday, they sat under the shade of a tamarind tree, sharing rice balls and boiled corn Huyen had packed. The wind was warm, and the sound of distant birdsong drifted toward them. "One day," Dee said softly, "we'll look back on this moment and remember how it all began." Huyen leaned against the tree, watching Maya chase a butterfly. "Yes," she replied, "and we'll tell her how we built everything from the ground up with love, patience, and our own hands." The sun began to set as they packed their tools, leaving the freshly tilled rows behind. It wasn't much yet, just bare soil, but in their hearts, they could already see the vegetables growing, the flowers blooming, and the small home standing proudly in the middle of it all. For the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel so far away. A week later, the first bricks arrived. They came stacked on the back of a small truck, dusty and red under the afternoon sun. Dee stood by the roadside, helping the driver unload them one by one. His shirt clung to his back with sweat, but his eyes held a quiet fire. Each brick was a step closer to the life he had promised Huyen and Maya. Huyen laid a mat under the tamarind tree for Maya to play on, keeping her safe from the tools and heavy loads. From time to time, she brought Dee a cup of cool water, watching him work with both pride and worry. She knew how much strain this would put on him, but she also knew his determination was unshakable. By the next morning, the village began to stir with curiosity. Neighbors stopped by, offering advice, lending tools, and sometimes just standing around to watch the progress. An elderly man brought over a bag of nails. Another neighbor handed Dee an old hammer. Even those who had little to give found a way to help by carrying a few bricks, mixing cement, or simply bringing words of encouragement. Maya wandered among the grown-ups, holding a small toy bucket, pretending to help by filling it with pebbles and bringing them to Dee. "Here, Uncle, for our house," she said, her eyes bright. Dee knelt down, ruffling her hair. "Every little bit counts, Maya. Thank you." The first wall rose slowly. Dee mixed cement in an old tin basin, spreading it between bricks with careful precision. Huyen stood nearby, holding the next brick ready for him. The sound of trowel against stone, the rhythm of passing bricks, and the scent of wet cement filled the air. There was something deeply satisfying in that work, something that made them forget the weight of their past struggles. By late afternoon, the shadows grew long, and the first row of walls stood solid and steady. They were only knee-high for now, but to Huyen and Dee, it already felt like a home taking shape. They sat together on the mat as the sun dipped low, sipping tea that a neighbor had brought over. The orange light bathed the half-built walls, and Maya curled up beside Huyen, yawning. "One day soon," Dee murmured, looking at the wall with tired but proud eyes. "We'll stand inside a finished house and say this is ours. No one can take it away." Huyen rested her head against his shoulder, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Yes," she whispered, "and that day will be the happiest day of my life." The road ahead was still long, but with every brick laid, their dream grew stronger. Life lesson from Dee and Huyen's journey. We learn that happiness is not built overnight, it grows slowly, like a home built brick by brick. Their story shows us that love, patience, and hard work can turn even the simplest dream into reality. They faced many challenges, poverty, uncertainty, and the shadow of the past, but they did not give up. Instead, they chose to work together, to support each other, and to believe in a future that was still unseen. Each day's effort, no matter how small, became a step forward. Even the smallest acts, Maya carrying pebbles, neighbors lending tools, proved that kindness and unity make burdens lighter. The greatest lesson is this: what truly matters is not the size of your house, the amount of land you own, or the wealth you hold. What matters is the love that fills the home, the willingness to stand beside each other through storms, and the determination to build a life where no one can take away your peace. When we face difficulties, we can remember Dee and Huyen's path. We may not have much at the start, but with steady hands, an honest heart, and people we can trust by our side, we can build something lasting. Just as a strong house is made from many bricks, a good life is made from many small, consistent efforts and the belief that tomorrow can be better than today.